I'm Sari Cooper, a certified sex therapist and sex coach in New York City. I'll be your host to Sex Esteem, a new show where we will explore in all its expressions relationships and sex in the modern world. Tune in for fun-filled facts and entertaining tips to having a more pleasurable sex life. Welcome to another Valentine's Day Countdown 2022. And I'm so excited to have Diane Barth, who is an author as well as a licensed clinical social worker and therapist. And I invited Diane, I'm so excited. I invited her to talk about actually her book that she wrote. The title is I Know How You Feel: The Joy and Heartbreak of Friendship in Women's Lives. So welcome, Diane.
Thank you very much.
And we are colleagues, and we've known one another's work as therapists, but I was so excited to know that your work as a writer is just as important. And
thank you.
Given that we're coming to Valentine's Day, I thought it was an important topic to discuss because I do a lot of work and groups with women. And one of the things they tell me is that actually some of the most intimate relationships they have in their lives is with their friends. And so tell us about your book, what it's about, and we can sort of launch in.
Okay. Well, it is really about what it says it's about. It's about the idea that women's friendships are not the beautiful fantasy that so many of us have about women's friendships. Sometimes they are, but often they're not. Often they're not pretty. They're very painful. They're ugly, but as you said, they're also extremely important and moments of great intimacy. And so it was really my effort to look at and think about and talk with other women about the many different forms that women's friendships take, and also how they change over the years, which is something that's really important about friendships.
So who did you, what kind of women did you interview for this book?
I started with friends, then I also talked to clients when we got permission from clients to talk about things that they had told me. But then I started expanding. I'm a somewhat shy person, and so but my husband is an extreme extrovert. So my husband would sort of make introductions. So we would be, I don't know, we would be on the bus in New York, and we would see two women across from us, and my husband would say, and they would be chatting. You could tell they were good friends. And my husband would say, would you be willing to talk to my wife about this book she's working on? And after a little while of him doing that, I started doing it. So I interviewed stewardesses on airplanes. I interviewed people that I was sitting next to in the subway. I interviewed my pharmacist. I interviewed just many different people because I wanted to get as many different ideas about women's friendships as I could. I also talked to men, because men have all kinds of ideas about women's friendships. Some of them valid, some of them not valid. But I got a wonderful comment from one of the men that I interviewed about how that he believed that his wife's friendships were what made their marriage work. That there were things that he knew that his wife could talk to his friends about, to her friends about, that she couldn't talk to him about because he wasn't interested and he wasn't responsive in the way that her women friends were. And that he thought that really enriched her life in a way, and enriched their relationship in a way that made their relationship better.
You know, it's an important thing that you just mentioned, I think, because one of the things I talk about with couples is that it's it's really hard to put so much expectation on one relationship, that your partner should be, everything, to you, and be able to listen to all your stories, or to fulfill all your needs and desires. And it can be a tremendous weight. And then it also can make a partner feel inadequate, actually, and frustrated or anxious about that inability to support and provide and fulfill and nurture and all of that. So were there any sort of like mm, big, I don't know if the word is themes or buckets or types of relationships that you sort of started to like put them in different sort of categories?
It's an interesting question. I'm not a categorizer, so I can't off the if I worked at it, I might be able to say yes. I mean, there were so I'm not there were themes. There were certainly themes, and some of them had to do with the different kinds of people that women had friendships with, and the different ways that women had friendships. So, for example, some women were really, really close to their family, and those were their best friends. And other women told me that even though they had sisters and you would think they would be close to them, those were not their best friends. Their closest friends were other women who they had made as friends over the years. I mean, so that was always interesting to me, because what makes somebody be best friends with their sister or with their mother? That was another one. And what makes somebody not be best friends? So a lot of women talked about that their best friend was their partner. And that then they, they had other friends who sort of added to the mix, but the person who was really their closest friend was their partner. Other women talked about, I mean, other themes that were there were what happens when you get really hurt by a friend, and how do you cope with that? And some women were able to talk about being able to really directly address it, and some women were not. Some women um, never quite healed from certain injuries. Um, there's also ghosting among women, which is sort of, you think we're supposed to be the empathic, the caring empathic ones, but no, we ghost each other, and the same way that couples ghost each other.
Okay, so you just there's so much you just said there I want to go back to.
Yeah.
One is this idea of being able, because I think it's an interesting title that you didn't just write the joy of friendship in women's lives. You said there's heartbreak, where your heart is actually broken. And most people think of that in terms of a romantic relationship.
Right.
And so what are some of the ways in which, give us some examples of some heartbreak stories?
Okay.
Let's start there.
So one that comes to my mind right away, and I went into some depth in this about this story in the book, because it's really a very poignant one, and at least I didn't do scientific research. So, but in the research that I did, the anecdotal, the gathering of anecdotes, I heard this kind of a story more often than you might expect. One of the things that I heard was, or one of the stories was, a woman whose best friend and her husband cheated on her. And so she was, the problem for her was that she felt that she'd been betrayed twice. So the two people who she felt that she could count on the most had both betrayed her. And that's a real heartbreak. That's one that's hard to heal from. She did, and one of the things that was helpful to her in the healing was her other friends. But that's a painful one.
Yeah.
Another one is I've heard many times friends who just dropped friends, and that is also very painful. But on the other side of that same coin, I talked to a lot of women who were, who felt that their friends had not been there for them in ways that they thought friends should be. And so they stopped being friends with those other women and never explained what was going on. But, so I'm assuming that the friends who were sort of dropped felt ghosted or felt hurt, but it was because the other woman had already felt hurt or felt. So for example, another woman that I talked to who I gave gave me permission to talk about her story fairly extensively was somebody who had gotten sick and whose best friend in the world, it completely wasn't there while she was sick. And another woman actually became very much involved in her life while she was sick. For her, it felt like a betrayal. It felt like a loss. She was not able to talk to that friend about it until much later. And actually, after she got healthier again, she and the friend did talk. And it was interesting to hear how they were able to come back together.
So you're talking about critical times, and I think in that way it does mirror couples, because I hear people talk about that they're still reticent and held back because of an incident that happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, in which in some very deep way they felt abandoned by their partner, by something they said or did or didn't do. And that kind of trauma at times, it's encapsulated and felt and processed as trauma, because it's a sense of abandonment. And certainly when one's sick, you expect your friends to be there for you. And it also begs the question of then of how does one repair, right? So when I talk about couples, I ask, I think this thing needs to be repaired before you can move forward. And so I guess you're talking about, like in this story, there was some discussion afterwards. Was there repair?
Yes, there was repair. So I actually think in a slightly different way, I think it's injury. I'm not sure that it's trauma, just because I make a little bit of a differentiation in my own mind about this. But there was definitely injury. There was, she was hurt. She felt injured. And this particular pair of women, this particular couple of friends, were able to talk about it in a way that allowed for repair of the injury or healing of the injury, which was that the woman who had been ill was able to say to her friend, it hurt my feelings that you just disappeared on me. What happened? And the friend was able to say, I don't think we ever talked about this, but I have a real dread of illness. It's my problem. I'm ashamed of it, but I have a dread of it. And when you became so sick, I couldn't bring myself to be with you. And I felt terrible about it, but I couldn't be there. And the process of both of them sort of sharing the pain they had each felt, and also, finding out that there was a genuine personal difficulty in being able, not just not being able to be there, but not being able to explain why she wasn't there, made the healing process, I think, move forward. I think that's one of the things that, I both know in couples work as well as in family work and any kind of work. If there's some kind of way to reach a sense of mutuality and empathy for one another,
right,
it's much easier to heal the injury.
Right.
I want to continue around ghosting in this topic because it's such a common complaint and concern and wound that we hear from our clients when it comes to dating. And I hear it, by the way, from women and men.
Yes.
More women than men feel they get ghosted, but I do also hear it from men. And so tell me how how do women ghost, or how are they ghosted? From your experience with this, in the book, with these interviews.
Yeah, yeah. I heard it often. And in surprising ways. So women who were from women who were really good friends to women who were just sort of developing a friendship. It was basically the same as it is with a man and a woman, where they're sort of moving along. And in some cases, about one example, a woman who, was very, very close to somebody, and her friend said to her, and she was complaining about a guy, and she was complaining about the relationship she was in. And the friend said, you know what? You have been through this so many times. I cannot listen to this again. And so she had warning, but she didn't really believe it. And then the friend never returned her call again after that. I mean, she apparently was fed up, and what she said, I think I'm not quoting it exactly right. What she said was, you keep hurting yourself, and I just can't listen to you keep hurting yourself.
Oh.
Meaning she keeps getting into these relationships that were bad for her.
Right, but the message didn't really come across to the friend that she was doing this out of compassion, actually, but compassion, and maybe just, I can't see you hurt yourself. Like, it's hard for me as a person who cares about you to see you putting yourself through that. It's intolerable to me, right? To watch that. But the other woman took it as what?
Well, she felt like, if you're really my friend, you will sit with me and help me struggle with these painful feelings. You're not going to just say goodbye.
Right. So there's actually, we're coming to a place about the parameters of relationships, of friendships. And do women expect more from their female friends than they do from male partners or even male friends? That there is an expectation there will be some sort of unconditional promise that a woman will be there no matter what, come hell or high water. And is this part of like our expectation of a mother figure, because they're, female, whether they're cis female or trans female? But is it, I wonder about that. Like, are we expecting more from female friends? And is that really realistic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that for many women, the definition of friend, period, whether it's another woman or a man, is that a friend is supposed to do certain things that are, I think, like the all good mother. I think that is exactly right. Because interestingly, there were plenty of women who didn't have this kind of idealized friendship, who were who described their friendships with other women as let's say with other women for a minute, but who described them as being more like the way we characterize male friendship. And by the way, I must say that in this process, I also learned that there are many men who have very intimate, very emotionally involved friendships. So some of the divisions that we make between, the old story about women have friendships where they're face to face and men have friendships side by side, that didn't hold true in a lot of my discussions. So there are lots of women who have friends with other women who are activity friends. They go
social friends,
friends, but also
like fun friends.
They go to movies together. They go skiing together.
Right.
They don't have friends where they sit and talk about all their feelings. So what I really learned is that there's a wide range of friendships. But yes, I think that in this fantasy of what a best friend is supposed to be, or a good friend is supposed to be, many of us fall into that trap of expecting an all giving, all accepting, all everything kind of all knowing kind of friend.
Well, I think that I encourage women to have, especially if they've whether they're partnered or not, to celebrate their girlfriends, to celebrate their close friends, to have a Galentine's Day, because these are, so important to our well-being, to our mental health, to our sense of purpose, to our sense of fun, to a sense of creativity. And they have so many elements that, people who sell products for Valentine's Day are really sort of selling one, right? But Galentine's Day, I think, is a wonderful way to honor our friendships and the special nature of it that really helps to keep us connected and loved. And especially after the year and a half, almost 2 years, I guess, of COVID that we've just went through, and how did we get through it? And people are suffering. So I think it's a great way to really not only honor our friendships, but honor ourselves as part of this being a friend, and how are we showing up to be a really great friend? So I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. This was lovely.
And your book is on sale, I guess, anywhere. And I know how you feel. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sari.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. You too.